continuing series on improving Sri Lanka's country competitiveness, brought to you by Empower SL. I'm your host Kasun Nupearachchi, and I'm joined by an eminent Sri Lankan today to talk about minerals to millions, the scientific research and development landscape of Sri Lanka and its involvement contribution to the country. To my left, I have Mr. Heminda Jayaweera. Mr. Jayaweera is the Chief Operating Officer at Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology, better known as SLINTEC. He is the co-founder of Venture Frontier Lanka, and he also serves as the Director of Effective Solutions and Jendo Innovations. He is an alumnus of University of Moratuwa. Welcome to the show, Heminda.
Welcome.
Yeah. So Heminda, to start off, could you please explain to our viewership what SLINTEC is and its mandate?
Yes. So I will just tell you a bit of a background as well for what SLINTEC is for. So if you really look at it, there are various ways that you can develop a country. For example, forget about the countries already developed, for example, European countries and maybe American countries. But if you really look at it, the countries that have developed, or perhaps the correct word is moved out of this middle income trap. You know, there's a terminology used. When you are really poor, your income levels are very low. So with low labor, you can do certain things. You can come up with factories and you can increase to a certain level. After that, when the country's population is a bit well off, then your production efficiency is not the same. So what Sri Lanka is facing today is that. So maybe 20-30 years ago, through manufacturing, we could have, with low labor force, we could get a lot of the exports were very attractive, but right now it's not the case. That's why some of the manufacturing that should have come to Sri Lanka are moving out of Sri Lanka. So we are in a bit of a middle income trap. But the countries that moved out of middle income trap in the recent time, they used different models. So one of the model that was very successful was, if you look at one example is South Korea. What happened was the government supported good entrepreneurs or good companies, corporates, to, we call this word called leapfrogging. So basically, if you are already in business, the government won't support you for your current business, but if you want to upgrade your technology in 2 times, not the next technology, but the technology that comes after that. So this is a high risky area. So the entrepreneur or the business itself may not invest a lot of money, but here what the government says is, we will invest part of that investment, either it as a loan or maybe as a grant. And then you can develop your technology not for the country population, the country consumption, it's for exports. For example, one of the good example in South Korea is that 50 years ago, Samsung was a big company in South Korea, and it was in retail business. But they never had electronics to mobile phones to all this. But then the government supported the company to invest in high-tech exports. And that is the result of what happened after 50 years. Samsung is now one of the biggest companies in the world. And because of Samsung, and there were not only Samsung, there were a few other companies like Daewoo to LG to all these companies, they developed. With that, the entire country developed. So that's the story behind South Korea, a model that any country can follow. Of course, the global economics are now different, but still there's a valid model. What you should do is you have to invest in high-tech exports. So why SLINTEC started was on the same intention. Of course, the model is a bit different, but the intention is the same, where if there's a company in Sri Lanka who has already doing well, but then they want to upgrade their products suitable for maybe global markets, then what happens generally is you need to bring science and technology into it, but that cost is quite high. For example, you already have a product which is selling very well in the market, but to export that you need a higher quality product. But then to upgrade into that level, you have to do a lot of scientific research. May need expensive tests. So if the company wants to invest in all that, that would be very costly. But here, what the government has done is, with government money, this happened about 10 years ago in 2009, built this facility in Homagama, and then it has all the equipment for nanotechnology and advanced research. So if company wants to get certain research done, you don't have to spend on the very expensive equipment. It's already there, but the company has to pay certain amount, lower amount, for the research only, and then they can get the same output, get it done through this facility. Otherwise, you have to maybe go to some other country, spend a lot of money, or maybe you have to build your own research lab. So there's a common lab spent by the government. The infrastructure is there. Not only the infrastructure, we have the talent. We have about 100 people working, majority are scientists. We have about 30 PhDs working, and also more scientists. So we have both the equipment, the talent, and the supporting facilities, like for example, if you have a product, if you want to mass manufacture that, we have that facilities as well. There's an engineering team who can take the lab product into mass manufacturing process or a plant as well. So that's the whole idea of SLINTEC, to give that science and technology support for existing companies to improve their products, preferably for global markets.
Right. So as a follow-up to that, in 2018 Global Competitiveness Report published by the World Economic Forum, under the criteria on digital skills among population, Sri Lanka scored 3.9 out of 7, ranking 85th from 140 countries.
Okay.
In the same report, under ease of finding skilled employees, Sri Lanka scored 4.3 out of 7, ranking 57th out of 140 countries. So which means as a nation we do have a considerable talent pool, however there is obvious room for improvement and growth.
Exactly, yeah.
So
Yeah.
touching upon what you mentioned before, in this context, Heminda, how do you view the role of research and development, innovation, research in terms of contributing to the competitiveness of the country?
Yeah, so if you look at it, it's not about one thing. For example, you have to look at it in a broader picture. For example, just having few PhDs in the company won't help you. Just having a research facility will not help. But it's the entire ecosystem that you have to look at it. For example, if good innovations to come out, you need to have the knowledge, the maybe the scientific community, the scientist, that is at the lab level. Then to take it to the next level, mass manufacturing, you need the engineering support, technology support, and then the money factor, because nothing is cheap. I mean, you have to first invest in the research, then you have to invest in the entire plant. So you have to bring in the corporates who can spend money on that, and then of course you have to have the government support, because some of the things SLINTEC already is result of what the government can do, but beyond that as well. For example, policy related support. If certain industries require certain support, for example, I can give you one example. One of the main criteria this is never written anywhere, but generally what they say is, if you want to see an industrialized country, that is measured with the amount of, for example, the amount of sulfuric acid is produced in the country. Now in Sri Lanka it's next to nothing. So generally, to industries to grow, this high level, high industries to grow, you need to have production of sulfuric. But then one company will not invest in a sulfuric acid production plant just for their industry, because it's too expensive. But ideally what should happen is maybe a consortium or maybe government to implement that, and around that you will have the other the industries will be built upon around that. So things like that. So you have to have certain facilities from the government side as well for certain areas, and then the policy support. So all this has to come into the picture. So we can discuss about that. There are certain areas we still find there are gaps. So the entire jigsaw puzzle is not complete.
So it's interesting that you mentioned the legislative and policy support aspect.
Yeah.
In the same WEF report that I quoted, under intellectual property protection, Sri Lanka scored 3.9 out of 7, ranking 81st among 140 countries. So, as you mentioned, how do you rate Sri Lanka's policy and legislative support compared to our regional competitors?
Well, I don't have the exact figures, but what I can tell you is, if you really look at it, the modern understanding of IP policies and IP protection. It's the value of IP, intellectual property, is based on how well you commercialize it. I mean, no point having patents, hundreds of patents or thousands of patents if you don't commercialize. So it's ideally, I don't know how this particular rating is developed, but if you try to identify the competitiveness by number of patents, that's not really show the real the intellectual property of a country or an organization. The real value is how well you can commercialize that, because that is where the money is. The moment you commercialize, the moment you bring money only, you can see there's a value in that particular patent or the intellectual property. So you have to understand it's not about getting so many patents or so many IPs. It's about how you commercialize that. So that should be the focus. So if you are scoring low in this IP area, one of the biggest reasons is not about we are not creating enough IPs, maybe we are not creating enough IP commercializations. So that's the problem. So IP commercialization is a whole new area altogether. It's about not just protecting, but maybe actually you are, focus is not to protect, focus is to actually show what you have done and then build relationship, bring all these other partners into it and make a business out of it. So it's not just protection. So a lot of people, when they say IP, they think about how to protect your IP. So the focus is not to protect your IP, focus is to how to bring money through science and research and technology. Yeah.
You spoke about commercialization. Let me share another step with you. In the Doing Business report of 2019 published by the World Bank Group, Sri Lanka was ranked 100th out of 190 countries in terms of the ease of doing business. One indicator in it was access to electricity, where Sri Lanka ranked 84th from 190 countries. In such a context, Heminda, what are your thoughts on R&D transforming into viable commercial applications? Do we have the proper infrastructure to?
Yeah, I think again, if the ranking is low, it's not because we don't have electricity, but our electricity tariff is quite expensive compared to at least the countries in this region. So I think that's maybe the reason, more than not having electricity. I think wherever you want to have factories or wherever, we have electricity, not that. But our tariff structure is very expensive because how we have balanced our entire electricity supply is solely based on majority on petroleum and expensive fuel. So I think that's where we need to change. Of course, the high electricity cost is a big issue in any industry, and we face that even now. When we look at coming up with high-end plants, we see that electricity costs play a major role because our competitiveness goes down. And what was the other question?
Same.
Yeah.
Similar to electricity in terms of infrastructure.
Infrastructure, I think I don't think that we have major issues. We are one of the best countries in terms of maybe the internet facilities. In terms, I'm not comparing us with maybe European countries, but at least if you compare with the regional countries, we are quite good in that. Then our road network, of course, it has to be improved, but I don't think that's a major issue for us to move to the next level. Then, yeah.
So, again, you spoke about commercialization of innovations and inventions. So, on that note, one of the instances, or on many instances, innovators find themselves unable to commercialize successfully their inventions. On this front, SLINTEC has its SLINTEC startup engine, which is Sri Lanka's only platform for scientific innovation-based startups. Would you like to share some information on that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems we have seen, and one of the grievances among inventors in Sri Lanka, what they say is that we have come out with this new technology and nobody there to support us, to take it to, nobody is putting us money because we have, on our own only we have come up with all these new inventions, but there is no one to invest money. So I think what you have to understand is this whole the difference meaning of the two words invention and innovation. So invention is about technology and you come up with something new, but innovation is a lot beyond that. So all the inventors in Sri Lanka, what they should understand is invention to innovation is totally different business altogether. So maybe the skill set that brought you up to become an inventor will never going to help you to become an innovator. For example, commercializing what you have created. So that it's a totally new skill set altogether. So I mean, there are some people, very rarely you get that both talent, both the technology side as well as the how to market your product and all that, but that happens very rarely. So generally what happens is, if you want to create innovations, it's about a team game or a group game. So one person can't do innovations. I mean, at modern context, you can't do, I mean, not only one person, one company can't do innovations, that is, it's about collaborations. So I think one of the biggest problems that we face in Sri Lanka is that this whole game of collaboration is never been taught or emphasized or focused. But wherever that is successful, wherever we see innovation, it's about collaboration. At least few people getting together or few companies getting together and utilizing their own capabilities and finding synergies. For example, if there's one person who is good at technology, creating something, creating a prototype or coming up with an invention, you need to have another person who is very good at selling, marketing that and taking to the, probably for an investor or maybe at least to go and sell to the end customer. Complementing skill set. So wherever that you have that complementing skill set, we see the innovations coming out. So one of the problems that we have, and the exact problem, the grievance that these inventors say is that nobody to support me. So the problem is not about the support, you have to find the person who can get that support. So maybe you don't have the capability to market it properly, or maybe you have developed something new, but nobody wants it. So, I mean, still it can be a new thing, but nobody wants this product, or maybe people are looking at something totally different, or maybe slightly different. So you have to understand that demand, and so that's where you need this different skill set. So I think if anyone wants to be successful as an inventor and go to the next level of maybe innovating and maybe entrepreneurial venture, you have to understand that it's about give and take. Maybe you have to share your technology, maybe bring a co-founder into it, and then bring the knowledge, skill set which is not there for you to sell the product, bring that person. So same with companies as well. For example, if it is say SLINTEC, we are more or less working on an area that, for example, if you take a university is good with maybe pure research, and we are working on more on the applied research. But again, trying to focus more into marketing, develop marketing skills to commercializing, basically commercializing the research. So that's the area that we are going to focus. But then again, SLINTEC ourselves, we may not be able to successfully come up with all these other new innovations and new commercialization. So that's why we have actually the entire setup itself is the government is 50% owned, 50% is owned by one of the leading 8 companies in Sri Lanka, 8 leading companies in Sri Lanka. So that is where we bring the support of commercialization. So if we as a organization, as one organization, we may not be able to do all that, but to commercialization, we have these 8 companies, 8 private companies supporting us. And also we, through the government link, we have the government support as well. And what we are trying to do with this SLINTEC startup engine is, now we are going one step below, giving the same the complementary skill set to our inventors. For example, if there is an inventor who has come up with a product, but certain technology he doesn't know, maybe he doesn't have the equipment to get that technology. So then if you apply for SLINTEC startup engine, we can bring that technology through our the knowledge as well as through our equipment and the facility that we have. Then SLINTEC startup engine is not only about SLINTEC, we have already partnered with few other parties. For example, we have already partnered with the organization called Startup X Foundry, and what they do is they bring the business skill set to this entrepreneur. Then also we have partnered with AOD, Academy of Design. That's the design side of, because design side, a lot of people forget about how valuable the design side is. For example, if you take one of the most successful product, say Apple phone. So Apple phone is there, and it's become a cash cow in the US market and all over the world because of its design. So the key attribute of Apple phone is the design. So a lot of people forget about how valuable that part is. So we have brought in Academy of Design as the design entity. So we can get the design support as well for our products. Then also we have already partnered with a few organizations like Lanka Angel Network and people like that, some investors to bring the money part. So we have packaged in such a way that we have all the components that is required for a successful innovation or entrepreneurial venture. So that's all about SLINTEC startup engine.
Interesting. So Heminda, you spoke about strategic partnerships and how it can help a coming entrepreneur or a company, etc. So SLINTEC made strides very recently in last year onto the graphite industry.
Yeah.
As in the launch of Ceylon Graphene. Would you like to explain us?
Yeah. So this is a long story. Actually, it was about 2 to 3 years story, or a little bit more, where it was conceptualized. So the story about graphite in Sri Lanka goes back to about 160 years. So the unique thing about graphite is not only graphite. There are so many other minerals that we have quite unique compared to wherever in other countries. But graphite is a super example. So graphite is found in many countries. Even if you go to China, many countries you find graphite. But the form of graphite in Sri Lanka, we call it vein graphite, is only found in Sri Lanka. But if you go to China, it's a different form called flake graphite. And likewise, in different countries, you have different types. The uniqueness of Sri Lankan graphite, which is vein graphite, is that its purity level is by far the best. If you take the Chinese graphite, flake graphite, maybe it's a 50% purity level. The purity level is measured by the amount of carbon, because graphite is carbon. But in Sri Lanka, if you take Kahadagaha graphite, which is the government-owned mine, we can go up to even 99.9% purity level of carbon. So with the purity level, the value of graphite increases, because the graphite is a raw material used in many industries, electronics to battery industry to so many industries. But the problem so far in all these 160 years, we have been exporting graphite, but we are exporting the best quality graphite at the same price which is sold in anywhere else. So that is the problem, and also with minimum value addition. For example, our value addition is just that if you've been to these mines, you will see of course there's a process that you have to bring the graphite mine and bring it up to, but then what we do is we just sell it as it is. And if at all you call it a value addition is minimal, maybe 10% or 20% but so what we have to understand is since graphite is used for many industries all over the world, the real value addition comes when it's developed this into that final product. And one of the recent finding was this particular product called graphene. So the difference between graphite and graphene is graphite is again graphite is a carbon lattice structure, but graphene is where you get one carbon atomic layer out from graphite. And this was actually discovered about 10 years ago. And all this time, there were different technologies developed in various countries to do the graphite to graphene transfer. But what we did in SLINTEC was actually we came up with a process. It's a patented process now, and also we have patented in many countries. We have one of the best graphite to graphene transfer process for mass manufacturing. So that's the key word, for mass manufacturing. Of course, you can maybe develop for small amount of graphene out of graphite, but this is the process that you can mass manufacture. So if somebody wants tons of graphene, we are capable of doing this. So we didn't stop just developing it at lab level. So fortunately, we had this very recently, about 1 year ago, actually last year, Lanka Oryx Leasing Company saw the value of this particular material, because in 2019 it was now defined as one of the supply critical material in the US market. What is meant by supply critical material is that US has started stockpiling the material, so they don't want to give it to anyone. And all this time what has happened is we have been selling the precious, the most valuable, the purest form of graphite to other countries, and the value addition happens in all these other countries. So that is what we have to understand. If we have the best material, if we have the best technology, if we have the best process, we should do the value addition within the country. So rather than now, for example, we are selling graphite at about starting from about $1 to $3 per kilo. The average is actually less than $2. But if you can transform that into graphene, the graphene is sold at 5,000 to 10,000 US dollars. Some actually higher quality one goes even beyond that. So it's at least about 2,500 times value addition, because with 2 kilos of graphite we can create 1 kilo of graphene. So this is the idea of what you call is high tech exports, because I mean, when we sell tea, maybe with 100 rupees of investment you can make it maybe earn 110 rupees. The value addition is very low. I mean, still it's money, but its value addition is very low. But with high tech export, maybe you invest 100 rupees, but you can get 1,000 rupees. So in the graphene case, you can get 10,000 rupees just investing 100 rupees. So that's and if the world is always looking for, there's a lot of demand in Sri Lankan graphite and the graphene, and if we have the best material, and if we have the best process and the technology, and this is a golden opportunity for us to really capitalize on it. Yes.
Right. So graphite and graphene is actually one example of the many mineral resources that Sri Lanka is proud to own. I mean, us Sri Lankans can be proud of having deposits in our own land. So, Heminda, what competitive advantage do you see in the mineral resources of our country compared to the other competitors?
Yeah, so graphite is a fine example, but other than that, we have so many other materials. For example, even silica, we call it the quartz, is also one of the best quality in Sri Lanka. Then if you take ilmenite and a lot of these mineral sands, also we have the best quality compared to other countries. And if you look at phosphate, again, one of the biggest deposits in the entire world and one of the best quality ones. So I mean, you can name so many things, and we have so much of resources. So it's not about that we don't have the resources, but only thing we have to understand is just selling the resource as it is will not bring a lot of money for a long duration of time. So what we have been doing all this time is selling if you take the same example of graphite, or even in the case of ilmenite or rutile, we have been selling the resource as it is. So what we earn is not enough. And sometimes what they say is they are selling the mineral sands lower than the normal sand we use for our own construction industry. So that is what we need to stop. So if that is happening, it's not going to help the country in the long term. So what we have to do is make sure that we bring the value addition and earn 10 times at least, or maybe in the graphite case 2,500 times. Bring that value addition, and then the focus on that. So even if we wait for some time till the technology is developed, that's fine. But focus is that we should value add and sell only, because we have the capability. So all this time the people were thinking that we don't have the technology, we don't have the scientists to do it. We have proven that we have the technology, we have the scientists to do it. We have already not only done it lab level, so it's not some accident, right? We have done it at lab level, we have done it number of times, and now we have developed the plant as well. So we already have to about 2 to 3 tons per year, and the same the plant with little bit more investment we can develop up to a bigger plant, and we can even go up to we can provide graphene for the entire world if it required.
I read that Sri Lanka is the largest vein graphite producer on a commercial scale as of now.
Well, vein graphite, we are the only country. Yeah. So there's no largest. Vein graphite is only in Sri Lanka only. So so basically we are the only producer when it comes to vein graphite.
So you spoke about value-added services and development. So in terms of inventions or innovations for that matter, development, so to speak, So in terms of minerals and inventions in general, which path would you recommend in the long term or the short term for a country, as in considering our regional geopolitics as well?
Yeah, so what you have to understand is, now if you take Sri Lanka's export market, because that is where you get the money, right? The whole so-called balance of payment and everything boils down to how much you can export and how much of money that you bring in compared to what you import. So generally, always it has been, our imports has been more than the exports. So that's why we have all these issues, and the dollar is always increasing and all these issues. But if you look at since 1970s, we have seen that export has been, before 1970s, exports were all plantation-based products. Then with 1978, after 1978, we had the apparel industry really improved, and we saw that majority or bulk of our export came from the apparel industry. But since I think 2000 or 2003, I think, after that we have seen the apparel industry also not improving within Sri Lanka, because most of the new factories are now actually not coming up in Sri Lanka. It's apparel industry also moving out. There are some very big companies who are doing really well, but as an industry we are not developing, because the new factories are now developed in Bangladesh to all these other countries. So it's not bad. This is the normal scenario. We call it the technology S-curve or the industry S-curve. So the apparel industry has come to that peak level. But where we are lacking is, for example, in any country, when the one S-curve is over, we can see new S-curve coming up. Maybe a new industry or maybe a new product or commodity to support that. So we are looking for that new S-curve. So all this time. So a lot of people talk about the IT industry is that S-curve or the new S-curve. But we see that still there's a big gap compared to what it should be. Now, for example, we are looking at 5 billion industry in 5 years' time, but we are still at, I think, 1.5 billion or whatever. So to at least to compare it with the apparel industry, we have to go to that 5 billion mark. But we are not there. And also, when you look at it, I don't think we can achieve the 5 billion mark in the next 5 years. I mean, the amount of IT experts that we are producing compared to how much IT experts required to make a 5 billion industry, we can't achieve in 5 years. But then a lot of people forget about there are other industries, and one of the industries that we can do is the mineral industry. So mineral industry has that capacity to not just 5 billion, even go beyond 10 billion mark, if you really understand the potential and focus on value addition. So for me, I see the mineral industry is the missing S-curve that we never seen all this time. But that is visible now because we have this technology support through SLINTEC and various other organizations. We can see we can do the value addition within Sri Lanka. So the moment you start selling only as raw materials, it's not going to be the industry that we are looking at. But the moment we bring the value addition, we can see we can earn 100 times, 1,000 times of money from the same product. So there I see one super chance of developing into that level, and beyond that, of course, IT industry still has that potential. But then I think where we are lacking is our focus is still more on, we call it tier 3 companies. For example, if you take most of Sri Lankan IT companies are actually doing a product for another company. We are not the company who is doing the end product. But the real money lies in the so-called tier 4 companies, where you give the product to the end customer. So right now what happens is most of our IT companies are doing a service. It's a service-oriented company. So we it's nothing wrong with that. Still service industry, servicing for another company has a lot of money. But the real money, the real value addition happen when you do a tier 4 company, a product-oriented company. So if you take Sri Lanka, what we have, product companies are very small. Out of maybe 100 IT companies, maybe 2 or 3 who's really doing some product-focused companies. So I think IT industry should move into product-oriented companies, and then you can see this entire curve changes to a new S-curve. So I think that's the focus on IT industry. Not only IT, anywhere. There's a lot of talk happens in Sri Lanka now about startups and all that. I think that's the right way, but we have to understand it should not be like a bubble. but we should really look at some world-class product companies from our startup ecosystem, and maybe government should support them, or maybe the entire ecosystem should support. We should focus on some few, I'm not talking about hundreds of companies, maybe 2 or 3 super product companies should come out of Sri Lanka, and we have the talent. Obviously we have the talent to do that. The missing point is maybe we are not synergizing enough. For example, where the money is required or where the policy level support is required, we need to have that. Because one of the companies that I'm co-founded called Jendo, which is a biomedical product, and we see a lot of potential in that. And this particular product, we are trying to identify your entire cardiovascular system without taking blood. But then when we try to, it's a biomedical industries, it's related to health of somebody. So you can't just market a product, develop a product today and market it tomorrow. There's a lot of approvals, a lot of testing, we call it clinical testing, has to be done. So it's a long process of time. And people should understand these are the type of product that you can't make money tomorrow. So you have to give some time, and maybe the entrepreneurs or people who are focusing on this type of products should be supported, either by the government or by investors, for looking at the long-term the success. So even now it's almost 3 years now, but we don't see that we can market it yet. But we see within next 2 years time. So we are looking at least 5 years time period for us to sell the first product. But if you can do it, it can be a world-class product. So what we need is similar product companies, similar product startups coming up in highly innovation-related products, where we can sell the product not only to Sri Lanka but to the entire world. I think that's where the money is.
All right. So moving back to SLINTEC. SLINTEC has been in operation for over a decade now. Heminda, what are the so to say next milestones that you all are planning for the next 5 years or so?
So one of the problems that we face, even though we have all this talent and all that, still we are not out of challenges. So we still have challenges. One of the biggest problems that we face is it's a big facility. So it's operationally the overheads are quite high. So we have to manage certain amount of overheads, and also we are not talking about just normal employees. These are the best of the best in Sri Lanka, the scientists with PhDs and all that. So we can't just keep them in Sri Lanka for paying small amounts. So generally our overheads are high. And for the last 10 years from the inception, we have not really achieved the so-called financial stability. So if you look at our cost versus what we have earned, it doesn't balance it out. So the first target for us in the year 2019 and 2020 is to achieve that financial stability. So at least we are self-sufficient. So that's our first target. So we are doing a lot of changes in the entire company and the way that we operate, and we see results now. So we see that more and more companies are now coming to us to get the support. So we do contract research for many companies now, and also the biggest advantage now we see is, which we are now focusing, is to go for not just for contract research, but to go for products that we can bring in recurrent revenue to SLINTEC. For example, the joint venture that we did with LOIC for graphite to graphene, the Ceylon graphene technologies, is one such option. So there's a percentage for SLINTEC, and whatever the graphene we sell and whatever the profits that we make out of that business, certain percentage always comes to SLINTEC. So it's a recurring revenue source for us. So we are trying to develop similar technologies. Now, for example, we are now almost finalized a product that we can save. If you really look at it, this entire agriculture industry, Sri Lanka spend about 40 billion Sri Lankan rupees every year for nitrogen-based urea. For agriculture to survive, we need nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. Out of that nitrogen, only to bring urea, we spend about 40 billion Sri Lankan rupees. And out of that, the government subsidy about 90% of urea. So it's, if you really calculate, about 35 billion the government spend just for urea. But what we have realized is that out of that, 60 to 70% urea, because urea is highly soluble product, generally go into waste because of the awareness problem and because of its the physical properties. So what SLINTEC did was recently we came out with this product. It's a bit of a it's a kind of a nano based product which will inhibit the release of nitrogen that easily. So basically the solubility has reduced, and now we can save at least 30 to 50% of the urea that we are going to use in but get the same crop yield from paddy and other products. So with that product only we can save about 30% of the government expenditure per year. So that we are looking at least 10 billion Sri Lankan rupees that we can save. So if the numbers are very important to understand. The entire SLINTEC facility over the period of last 10 years, what we have spent is about the same amount. So with one product that we came out recently, we can build another SLINTEC. So this is the wow factor of science and technology. If you really do it right, it can create a lot of wealth in the country. So with one product, of course, so people are talking that SLINTEC is not earning what we are spending. But actual case is just one product, we can create another SLINTEC. So this is where we should focus. It's nothing wrong with science and technology. We should always focus on science and technology, but we should focus on the right product and the right commercialization model and the right markets. So if you do that, like the example of CGTL and like the example of this new the urea product or product, we can actually create a lot of wealth through the knowledge, science and technology. So that is the focus for the next few years.
Good. Yeah. So diverting to another aspect, you were recently selected for the Eisenhower Fellowship's 2020 Global Fellowship Program.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks.
And our viewers would be excited to know more about this achievement and the process. Could you share some information if you don't mind?
So one of the reasons I got that is also actually, so this Eisenhower Fellowship, it's not a research fellowship, it's something different. When you say fellowship, a lot of people think it's something to do with research. No, it's what I have to do is actually a long-term project. So it's a 3 to 5 year project that you have to select, and you have to pitch it to various people. First you have to pitch it in Sri Lanka, get selected to the local, select from the local interviews, and then I managed to face the global level interviews, and I got selected. So my project is actually the same thing that I described. So Sri Lanka's high-tech exports currently stays at 1%. Exact amount is between 1.5 to 1%. Some say 1.7%, but it's around 1%. High-tech exports means nanotechnology to biotechnology, electronics to car manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, all that. So our exports as a percentage of other exports is about 1%, which has not changed over the past 40 years. But if you take countries like South Korea, they were similar about 50 years ago, but now they are, out of their total export, 42% is on high-tech export. So that's, you can see how the countries has developed. If you focus on high-tech export, generally you get more yield, more money, and you can move out of this so-called the middle income trap. So my project I selected was to bring 1% of the current high-tech export to 5% within next 10 years. So I selected a 5-year project where I will work on through SLINTEC and through other initiatives that I am doing to bring that to 5%. So that's the project that I presented. I think the entire Eisenhower Fellowship is basically, it's about the importance of that is that there are about 1,500 people who have already got this in the last 50 to 60 years. It was started in 1950s after the former President Eisenhower of USA, and the idea of this particular fellowship is to, it's not about getting money. I'm not getting any money out of it, but I get a 2 months program in USA where I can go and visit various places in USA which I can name. For example, my project is how to bring Sri Lanka's high-tech export to 5%, which I can't do on my own. I don't have the knowledge, skill set or whatever. There are certain things that I have, but there are a lot of things that I don't know. So then I can always go and see how it is done in USA. For example, in USA, how it is developed, maybe technology research facility or wherever, how it is done. So I can go and meet people even at the highest level and get that contacts. And so Eisenhower Fellowship will support me to get that contacts within that 2 months or even beyond that. And also I can always tap into that 1,500 Eisenhower Fellows all over the world and speak to them at any given time and getting to know that network. So it's the network that is really important. So I think I'm quite privileged to be part of that fellowship. And already there are about 19 people already got it in Sri Lanka in the last 50 years. And yes, so that's...
Okay, so with that, we've now come to the end of our program. In conclusion, Heminda, would you like to share some message to our post that may be heard?
Yeah, I think, so it's about, so in Sri Lanka we see, talent-wise we see very good talent, we see very good engineers, we could see very good doctors, good accountants, I mean world class. But where we are really lacking is these innovations. I mean, you came up with various the indices. In one thing you forgot is the Global Innovation Index. So Global Innovation Index also we are lying somewhere in 90s out of 120 countries. I'm not saying it's, I mean it's still we are backbenchers, but the problem is that has not changed for the last 10 years. We have been there 90s, so we should change it. So even though we have good engineers, good doctors, good accountants and all that, when it comes to innovations, we are far away. We don't have good innovations, good innovators. So I think that's where we should focus. So innovations, what people should understand is innovation doesn't come with one person's talent. It's about how you link up with different talent and create that group work. So say I'm a technologist, I link up with a person with marketing skills. If I'm a marketeer, I link up with a person with some business knowledge. If I'm a business with a person with business skill, how I link up with maybe a lawyer or legal entity, or how you bring all that different skill set into one picture. That's where the innovation. I think that is where we should focus. It should start from very low level, maybe at the education level, school level. We have to focus education, universities and even companies, and even among companies. So we have to understand you can't survive as one company today, because it's the famous saying of if you read the book called Innovator's Dilemma, even if you innovate, you can't survive. So what they said, you have to do disruptive innovations, where you have to come up with innovations that make predecessor product obsolete. So that is where the world is moving, and that's what went wrong for a lot of companies like Kodak to Nokia to all these companies. They have been innovating, nothing wrong with that, but they didn't do disruptive innovation. So I think that's where we should move, and we have that talent. Sri Lanka have that talent, we have the resources, which we have proven now with graphite. So a lot of people are saying Sri Lanka doesn't have resources, we don't have oil, we don't have that and this. Now we have better things than oil now, more important things, more valuable things than oil now. So we have unearthed that, and we have shown that we have that resource. So Sri Lanka has the talent, Sri Lanka has the resource, Sri Lanka has everything. It's just that we have to synergize all this into creating that the real wealth. So that is, I think, is innovations. So create that innovation ecosystem, which should be the focus of the government and all the people around it, the companies, the corporates to individuals.
Okay. So with that note, we will now conclude our discussion. I thank Mr. Jayaweera for sharing valuable insights and participation. So all of you who are watching out there, do tune in for another productive and interesting discussion on a similar topic brought to you by Empower SL. I am Kasun Nupearachchi, and until next time, thank you and have a nice day.